I've read enough, but stuff like that ekes me out so bad. I will admit, like, this one is a petty one. This one is like, I'm actually a little bit nervous to say this one, and it might be a little unfounded. Hello, my name is Vanessa. Welcome back to my channel. I am excited, but I'm also nervous today. I'm making a very bold decision and kind of making a hot take-esque video. Let's just get some things out of the way. First things first, I'm not wearing my glasses, so if you see me squinting, just ignore it. Second thing second, I had tanning drops on my hands that I was not able to successfully scrub off. So if you see that, also ignore it. I know many of you will not be able to ignore some of the hot takes I have today. I recently was looking at some of the books I had on my TBR, and especially the ones that were way older, and I was just going through and seeing if my opinions have changed on my TBR, seeing if there was any that I needed to unhaul from there. I have a couple books that on my TBR that I want to talk about because I am no longer interested in them. I no longer want to read them, and I have very specific reasons as to why. So I thought I would share that today. Why? Just so that you can get to know a little bit more about my taste. And also, it's interesting to see how my taste has kind of evolved over the past few years of me reading more seriously and taking my TBR more seriously and getting more obscure book recs and just sort of evolving my taste. This is just my, please hear me out, honest opinion. I figured I would just rip the band-aid off with a really big one. I, at the moment, am not interested in reading any of the Brandon Sanderson books I have on my TBR. I'm so sorry. The truth is, I do respect Brandon Sanderson, and I love what he's done for the genre. I love how much everyone I know loves Brandon Sanderson. I fully believe that he's great at world building. I believe everyone's enthusiasm for this books, and I think it's great that so many people are so into the worlds that he's created and this passion for fantasy that he has kind of ignited. I'm really happy whenever he has a release and everyone seems to have this renewed enthusiasm about reading again. I think that's awesome. I think personally for me, and keep in mind, this is all for me. Personally, for me, someone described his books once as like a little too warbly, like a little too lengthy, a little too warbly. And I've come to the realization over the years that that's actually a writing style I really have very little tolerance for. I like purple prose. I don't mind being a little lengthy. I don't automatically assume just because something's lengthy that means that it's bad. It just depends on the prose, but the word warbly really put me off, I think. And I've also heard a couple people say about his world building is that it has taken a few books to get into some of his bigger series. Like, I saw someone say like, oh my gosh, once you get to book 3, it really picks up. Book 3? Oh baby, I need to be invested within the first 200 pages. I don't even consider myself someone that has a really short attention span, but I don't think that I have the patience for that at the minute. But I totally respect all the people that love his work. I liked Trust of the Emerald Sea. I liked that. I thought that was a cute story. The other element of it is like that book kind of leaves my mind very frequently because if you haven't noticed by now, I am not a super plot forward reader. I can appreciate a good plot if it's there. I'm sure he writes great plots in the 3rd book of the series, but I am at the minute just haven't found myself with a hankering to pick up a dense plot forward book as much. And I'm sure his characters are great too, I'm not saying that, but I'm just not really interested in a really lengthy plot forward heavy fantasy book at the minute. I think this is one where it's like a soft opinion. I think like I could see my opinion changing on this, but at the moment I'm not that interested in the Brandon Sanderson books I have on my TBR. Please do not be offended. I respect him, I respect you. All love, all love, all love. Next, since we're talking about like huge authors, I might as well just rip this band-aid off too. Sarah J Maas. Okay. I don't know that it's surprising that I fall into this camp necessarily. I do want to say a lot of people I personally, in my personal life, in real life, love dearly. Absolutely love Sarah J Maas. It has fully ignited their love of reading as well for a lot of people in my life, and I really do respect that. I'm very happy for that. I didn't actually have that big of an issue with the first 2 books of A Court of Thorns and Roses. Like, I read 2 of them, so like clearly there was stuff I liked about it. It's another issue where she's a bit too warbly. It's a writing style thing mostly. I just have no desire to pick up her books because a lot of her writing style is very redundant to me, and I found that with those books that I did read. Even from her own fans, a criticism I see of the books that she's released recently is also that it's very redundant and that it could have used an editor. And it just seems like her books are getting thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker as she gets more and more and more popular, and as she's able to say no to more and more publishers and has like just so much of that power. Not saying that she's power hungry or anything like that, but it just feels like if A Court of Thorns and Roses and the second book of that series are like the tightest that it gets for her, that was already too loose for me personally, prose-wise. A lot of the premises that she has in her books are things that I have been finding alternatives to in, you know, indie publishing, romantasy, that I have been very satisfied with. There's just not a hole in my heart that I think Sarah J Maas could fill for me at this time. Also, the Breonna Taylor thing was really crazy. Next is Powerless. This is one that I could have confidently said about 6 months ago that I knew I wasn't gonna read, but let's just talk about it here now. When I worked in a bookstore and Powerless first came out, whenever I saw girls walking around the store with it, or when I was going to check them out and everything like that, I'd be like, oh my, and I would always try to spark up a conversation with girls because I want to make friends with the girls that come into the bookstore. My go-to was when someone was holding that book would be like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to read that. Everyone says it's so good and it's so fun. I really did believe that I was gonna read it until all the reviews started coming in, especially reviews from people that I really highly trust, and everyone was saying like, oh my god, this is just so derivative of Red Queen, which if you don't know me, I'm not saying Red Queen is some masterpiece, but I was on book Tumblr in 2015, 2016, in 2017, so I know the impact. I respect the impact that book had, and clearly it is evergreen because a lot of the just comparisons that I've seen of Red Queen it's like a little too eerie. I don't think it's plagiarism. I won't go that far. I really don't think it's that. I do think it's inspired. I think it's like, oh my gosh, like a sister who breaks a hand or a finger who's into sewing, and then there's just like really, really eerie similarities, and there's been so many videos made on that. It'd be one thing if people were saying like, this has so many similarities, but the writing is just so good, or this story was so gripping, or this romantic subplot was just so yearning. A lot of what I see is like, this is the same old as it has been since 2015. Nothing new. In fact, it's almost like a more stale version of that. You know, I've read enough YA fantasies about like the resistance in some prince or whatever. I think I've had my fill. I don't think Powerless again is gonna fill any hole for me. I almost want to read it just to kind of be in the know about like what is the goss around this book, but outside of that fact, I have no other like intrinsic reason for wanting to read this. I only have selfish reasons to be able to talk about it on the internet. All love, all respect if you like that book. I just don't think it's gonna be something that I'm interested in. Okay, now on to kind of like a lesser known one. It's still really popular, but Wayward. So it's definitely popular, but a lot of the reviews I saw, I had it on my TBR, and a lot of the reviews I saw after a couple months of it being out kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies. Okay, I've said this before, I really don't like bioessentialism in books, and I think this falls into that category. This is about like a group of witches, and a lot of their magic and their earthly magic is kind of like, it sounds like it's connected to their bodies and the cycle of like their menstrual cycle and like the biology of being a woman. I can see the vision. Vision, but stuff like that ekes me out so bad. I don't like in romantasy books when we're talking about like mating and a bunch of animalistic stuff, and a lot of like the language is centered around like biology of bodies, and especially like a woman's the beautiful gift of birth, which of course it is a beautiful thing, and it's a wonderful thing, and it's a very brave and important thing. But I don't like tying it to this like mystical aspect. There's something about it that gives me the heebie-jeebies. Outside of the turfiness of it, it just like on a personal level, I really don't like associating my identity so strictly with my biology as a woman. And I fear that's something that we're actually seeing a lot with the red wave, is people attributing women's roles and the gift of women to their ability to reproduce and our reproduction. So I'm just like, I just have no interest in reading it right now in this political climate. I've heard that this is like great in other ways, and it's like feminist touches that it has. I believe that. I'm not interested in the bioessentialism of this magic system. I don't think I'll ever want to read a book with that sort of magic system. Like every time that's mentioned about a book, I always opt to not read it, because I know that on a personal level I dislike it, but also like on a cultural level I dislike it. Like it gives me pause like twice over. I'm just not interested in Wayward. This one might seem left field. I had Throne of the Fallen on my TBR for the longest time, and I spent like a good month trying to figure out how to properly pirate it, but then it was like my Nook wasn't letting me do that. But like I really, really, really wanted to read this book for a very long time because I heard it was like it's a very tension-filled, angsty, like fae romantasy story, which on paper I actually do like all of those things. I am not a romantasy naysayer, so I thought that I would really like it. But then when I started reading reviews about it, I liked the idea of it being spicy. I kind of wanted it to be spicy. I was open to that. But the reviews that started coming in, and what people were saying were, this is a bunch of smut scenes just strung together by like miscellaneous misunderstanding and like a very thin fantasy plot that like it just doesn't feel like a full book. Like it feels like it was written for TikTok, which is like, that is kind of my worst nightmare picking up a book, is picking it up and realizing that it was just a strung together series of scenes that would do well on TikTok and sell well on TikTok, but has no intention of like being its own confident piece of work. Like I don't want to read something that feels like it's written for that. I'm not accusing the author of doing that or anything, but if it feels that way to me, and now that that has been planted in my head, I no longer really want to read this book. I'm open to reading something adjacent to that, as long as like the actual story itself has substance. It can have spice in it too. That's not a problem. Just I don't want it to be like spice strung together by nonsense. And that sounds like that's what people were saying, and now I'm like scared to read it, and like maybe I still will, but like I'm thinking no. I have enough fae romantasy books on my TBR because I'm not a naysayer. And I'm one of you, and I swear. I guess that's the same thing for Serpent of the Wings of Night. That was another one where it was on my TBR, and I really, really, really wanted to read it when it first came out. I was actually really, really excited about this book because I was like, oh my gosh, vampires are back, because this was back when vampires were back. Now vampires have been back and are going again. I was really into like the fae vampire, like Batwing kind of situation at the time. But it just sounded really cliche. And one thing people kept saying about this book is like, oh, I like the male main character. I really didn't like the female main character. She was like, they would always emphasize their height difference. This is something I really don't like. It's something that I sometimes just can't avoid, and so I try to overlook it. But they're like, yeah, they really emphasize the height difference, and it's like, oh, this tiny, feeble woman, but she's stabby, and she's somehow like able to compete with these like vampire guys. Like, I think I'm just now, 2 years later, very sick of that cliche of like the stabby, like mouthy, like tiny, teeny, tiny wayfish female and main character with like the big, broad, burly main male character. I just like, I don't know. I'm just not in the mood for it anymore. I'm just not in the mood for it. I want two characters that are like both 6'1". Yeah. Otherwise, it just seems like, I don't know that the plot of this would grip me very much. I'm not saying it doesn't sound objectively bad or anything. It just seems like nothing's really catching me anymore. I feel like now that era has passed, there's been other books that kind of would hit those notes for me that I'd rather pick up. Okay, this one, like, I'm actually a little bit nervous to say this one, and it might be a little unfounded, but Divine Rivals? Okay, here's my reasoning for Divine Rivals. I believe you guys when you say this is like the best yearning romantasy book ever. I believe that that's what it was for you. I have come to realize about myself, I don't really like romantic subplots. Like, my least favorite part about a romantic subplot is the romantic part. Like, I like the chase, I like the tension, I like the angst, I like the denial of feelings, I like the inner turmoil. I almost like when they can't even admit it to themselves. Like, that's my favorite part about it. And I bet this does have it. So I might be like really off base here. I bet this does have it, but I want that to be most of it. And a lot of the gushing that I see about this book seems to be that people think this book is really, really romantic, and it's really, really like a beautiful love story. I'm not that interested in love stories per se. I'm a little scared. You please tell me if I'm off base, because if this is not the case, then I will pick it up. Like, this is one where I'm like kind of open-ended about, because a lot of people that I love really love this one, but it seems to be more of a love story than like an angsty romantic subplot, and that's kind of like the only time I'm really interested in romance is when it's like angsty. I could be off base. Please tell me if I'm dead wrong. Please tell me if I'm dead wrong. Let me know if this is one that's actually not boring and is actually really angsty and that you think I would like. But that's the vibe that I get based off of the language that people use around this book. But I believe that it is good at what it set out to do based off of your responses to it. So I believe that. This is one where like I've held my tongue about this particular author for so long, and I'm still anxious to say it because I'm like, this is like friendly fire right now because this is a very beloved author in the spaces that I frequent. And I really, really respect this author. I want to say that I really, really, really respect this author. I respect R.F. Kuang. I really, really do. I really do. I think she's really smart. I think she's super well researched. I love watching her speak. I've saved a lot of videos of her speaking on my TikTok because I think she's so articulate. I think she has so much to say that is so important. And I think that the subject matter of her books are really intriguing and very important. And it's important that they're talked about. And this is not a matter of you don't get R.F. Kuang. I get R.F. Kuang. My thing was I read Babel and I gave it 3 stars. I loved the premise. I loved the idea behind the world building. I loved the idea behind the characters. But when it actually came to being in the book and being with these characters, it always just felt like I was just out of arm's reach of something. Like it just felt like it was missing something. Her writing style is a little bit detached. I know that people make the claim that like she's a little bit too academic. I actually love the footnotes. I love all the academic ramblings of that book. My problem was when it came to those more literary, those more emotional scenes and the prose in those scenes, I always felt like I was not really like let into the relationship building within Babel in particular, which was really disappointing to me because I think it could have been such an emotional journey, and I think it was for very many people, and I really respect that, and I think that's awesome. And I'm not one of these people that's like, I'm gonna accuse her of like talking down on her readers or like, oh, she is so arrogant. Like people sling those sorts of things at R.F. Kuang all the time. I'm not here to do that. I do not think those things. I think she's intelligent. I think she's wonderful. I think she's very smart. I think she seems really sweet. I don't think she's arrogant. I'm interested in the types of stories that she tells, but when I was reading Babel, I just couldn't stay focused. There was just something that I felt like I didn't know these people. It always just felt like she was holding back from a lot of like the emotionality of her own book, and I was a little bit disappointed by that, to the point where like I came away with a really lackluster feeling. I've heard this is not so much the case for Poppy War, which I haven't read, but I've heard a lot of similar criticisms about Yellowface and more recently about Catabasis. And so based off of like even R.F. Kuang lovers saying that they were disappointed with Catabasis because it was marketed as this like romance novel, or she said that she really wanted to up the romance in it, and it seems like that was a little bit falling short. And I was like, based off of my experience with Babel and how I wasn't really a fan of the writing style there, I think I just might not be a fan of this particular author's writing style. But I want to give Poppy War a chance because I've heard that it's so different from those other works that I just mentioned that like I'm open to her wowing me. I'm hesitant on Catabasis in particular because it sounds similar to the criticisms that I had of Babel when I read it, but I respect Babel, and I'm glad that people love it and read it, and I would recommend it to everybody if you're interested in that, because I think it's an important book to read, and I'm really, really pleased that her success has hopefully inspired the publishing industry to take on a lot more stories like that. So keep reading R.F. Kuang, please, please. I hope that she continues to be a very successful author. I just don't know that she's the author for me personally, and I'm sorry about that. I have since removed Catabasis off my TBR. That was really hard for me to say. Why did that? I like my chest is like my heart is pounding. That was actually really hard for me to admit. Please, please, we are kin. I swear, we are kin. We are sisters. We are peers. Please. Okay, my next one is My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which I did not read back when it was really popular. And the reason for this is definitely like more petty. I will admit, like this one is a petty one. This one is like, I think that the thing about My Year of Rest and Relaxation, despite how good this book might be, I actually think this is a book where I would really relate to it. But the reason why I'm hesitant to pick it up is I think it has encapsulated like the TikTokification of publishing, the contentification of reading in general, the hot girlification, all of the occasions of what we're seeing in reading and book talk and publishing that is making it speed up the content cycles and the trend cycles as fast as it has, to the point where it's like, it's the aesthetics of being a reader over actually like the content of the book you're reading and what is actually like pulling you to certain genres, pulling you to certain authors, and resonating. And I'm not saying that whoever reads this or whoever read this back in 2020 didn't actually resonate with it. I believe I probably would have resonated with it. It's just that I attribute it now because of the endless slew of video essays with this picture of this book on the thumbnail, I now associate it so much with those very specific topics that I think about on a loop as I'm like scrolling through my feeds. I can't separate them anymore, and it's fully a me problem, and it is not a this book problem. Like, I've never read it. I actually don't know much about it. I've heard good things about it. I just can't separate those issues anymore in my head to the point where I just don't really have the desire to pick this book up. I think it'd be a fun challenge for me to do a vlog where I read books where I have like maybe a preconceived notion of them, and I try to come at them from like total like an objective standpoint. Like, I think that might be a fun challenge, but at this time I'm just not particularly interested in this, and it is a me problem, and it is a bit petty, and it is a bit shallow, but that is, yeah, my rest and relaxation. I don't think I'm gonna be reading this anytime soon. The next one is also one that kind of breaks my heart because it was an anticipated read for me, but it's Lady McBeth by Ava Reid. Yeah, like, I had a couple people, like, once this book actually came out, and I had been waiting for it forever, and I thought that I was gonna read it right upon its release, I kind of dragged my feet a little bit, and then the reviews started pouring in for it, and it got mixed reviews. Like, it definitely doesn't seem like this is objectively a bad book, but there's a couple things that kind of like, about this book that I'm not as interested in reading it. Maybe I still will one day. I did see people say that it got kind of boring in the middle, or that Lady McBeth, like, some of the choices made were just a little bit out of character, or just seemed left field, or seemed like kind of nonsensical. So I saw some criticisms like that. The main issue that I saw people saying were actually from Scottish people, saying that this book was like severely under-researched and was like borderline offensive at times when it comes to like Scottish representation and use of the Scottish language. Apparently, like, the etymology of certain things were wrong. She had mixed up certain languages at some points. Things like that. Very Rebecca Yarros. Okay, I know I keep changing the camera angle. It's because I'm running out of space all the time. It's like the Scottish men are described as like kind of brutes and violent and angry. I don't love that. I don't know that I like that. And plus, on top of that, people just saying like, overall the book was meh. It was like a bit boring, a bit hard to pick up at times. You know what? I don't know. I just don't think I'm interested. I love that cover though. I love that cover. I want to put that on my shelf so bad, but I don't know that I'm not interested in reading it at the minute. So, Okay, last but not least, because it's kind of the thing that kind of ticks me off the most, but Patrick Rothfus in general, but like Name of the Wind, for example. I recently came across a review of the Kingkiller, like, Chronicles, that book series that he made, and it was like just like an incel boy's fantasy of like sexual domination. It just seems like a lot of the reviews I see of his work is like he has very few female characters in his book, and when he does, they're very flat, or like the strong female characters are like over-sexualized, and that's his idea of like having a very, very badass woman character. I'm just not interested in this at this time in reading books by men that do that to women and describe women neck down, waist up, and that's it. Based off of everything I've seen from women reviewing a lot of those books, I know a lot of women love those books. I'm sure that they're great fantasy books and fantasy world building and things like that. I just have no patience reading books where it's very clear that the author doesn't view women as people and like doesn't seem to have any empathy for them as characters, as human beings, as people with feelings. It's just it's hard for me to believe that someone could be a truly great author and lack empathy for women in that way, or see us as so one-dimensional. It's just hard for me to buy that your writing and your emotionality and everything can be that great if you can just dismiss half the world like that, or if your worldview, like, I know that probably in his worldview he's not seeing it this way, but that's how I'm interpreting it, and that's just like, I just have no patience for it anymore. And I'm just not interested in reading. I know it's a fantasy classic, but Name of the Wind, for example, I don't know if I want to put myself through another book by a male author like that. I've really grown into picking up all these fantastic female authors, a lot of independent female authors, a lot of independent male authors even, that are fantastic authors, and I don't need to read this. I don't need to. I don't need to do it. I just have no tolerance for it anymore. I'm just really over it. I can't do it. I'm sorry. There's like a handful of authors coming to my mind, but I'll spare you guys for now. I think it's interesting to see kind of how my taste has evolved based off of going through my TBR, but that's where I'm at with those books, those authors. I hope you can understand. It's all love. If you like any of those authors, I love that for you. As always, you won and I lost. We are on the same team though. But thank you so much for watching and tolerating. I really appreciate your kindness. with this video. Okay, I can't see anything with my ring light anymore, so I'm gonna head out now and eat some dinner. Bye!